When you notice your grocery bill creeping higher, or the cost to fill your gas tank spiking overnight, you are often feeling the direct result of an event happening thousands of miles away. A supply chain disruption in one hemisphere or clogged freight ports in another dictate the prices in your local checkout aisle. The modern global economy operates as a single, highly sensitive nervous system. An energy shortage or financial panic in a distant market can trigger immediate inflation and job losses in your own neighborhood. Yet there is no global president. There is no world parliament with the authority to step in, manage trade disputes, or stop a cascading financial meltdown before it reaches your wallet. Because no single government can fix a global supply chain or stabilize international markets alone, the world's most powerful economies required a specialized room where they could coordinate their responses. This map illustrates the reach of the Group of 20, or G20. It is an informal gathering of world leaders whose nations collectively control roughly 85% of global GDP, 3/4 of international trade, and about 2/3 of the entire human population. The organization operates entirely on a paradox. It possesses no permanent headquarters, employs no dedicated staff, operates without a constitution, and has absolutely zero power to pass legally binding laws. Despite having no formal legal authority over any sovereign nation, the consensus reached by the people in this room end up dictating the trade rules, technology regulations, and economic stability for the rest of the planet. For decades, the global economy was steered primarily by the G7, a small, exclusive club restricted to the world's wealthiest advanced democracies. The 1997 Asian financial crisis forced a reckoning. Severe economic turmoil ripped through rapidly developing nations, proving that emerging markets had grown far too large and too deeply integrated into global supply chains to be excluded from major financial decisions. Recognizing the blind spot, finance ministers and central bank governors from both developed and developing economies established the G20 in 1999 as a technical meeting ground to monitor global markets. When the 2008 global financial crisis threatened a total collapse of international banking, finance ministers alone were no longer sufficient. The situation forced an emergency upgrade, elevating the G20 into a high-stakes leader summit. The massive bank rescues, stimulus packages, and financial reforms that prevented a deeper global depression were negotiated directly through this new framework. The crisis proved that saving a modern, interconnected economy requires bringing all the world's major financial engines, both old and new, to the same table. The G20 replaced the G7 as the premier forum for international economic cooperation. Without a permanent headquarters, the G20 relies on a rotating presidency. Each year, a different host country takes charge of setting the agenda and outlining the priority issues for the globe to tackle. This flowchart tracks how priorities become policy. Sherpas negotiate details behind the scenes. The IMF and WTO plug into these tracks, providing economic data. The process funnels down to the Leaders' Summit, publishing shared commitments in a joint declaration. Because the G20 cannot force binding laws upon any sovereign state, this exhaustive, consensus-based pipeline is the only viable method to align 20 fiercely competing national agendas into coordinated economic action. As a rapidly growing major economy, India illustrates the G20's evolution from a Western-dominated steering committee into a platform where emerging markets exert geopolitical influence. During its 2023 presidency, India utilized its role as host to actively champion the China Plus One strategy, encouraging international businesses to diversify their manufacturing supply chains and direct heavy investment toward the Indian subcontinent. It also used the summit to position its highly successful digital public infrastructure, specifically its digital payment networks, as a foundational, exportable model for the rest of the developing world's digital economy. Under India's leadership, the 2023 summit achieved a major structural milestone, admitting the African Union as a permanent member, amplifying representation of the Global South. By successfully steering the agenda, India's leadership demonstrated that emerging nations now use the forum as a primary lever to rewrite the rules of global trade for their own strategic benefit. When G20 leaders coordinate their national policies on energy security and the transition to green technology, they are directly influencing the oil markets, that determine global fuel prices and the cost of your daily commute. Their joint declarations regarding international agricultural policies and food security dictate how smoothly supply chains operate, which ultimately impacts the availability and cost of the groceries on your supermarket shelves. Currently, working groups are negotiating the foundational frameworks for artificial intelligence governance and coordinating efforts to secure the critical minerals needed for semiconductor manufacturing. Whichever standards they agree upon will decide where billions of dollars in global tech investments flow, essentially determining which regions will generate the high-paying tech jobs of the next decade. Most citizens will never attend a summit or read a joint declaration, yet the consensus reached inside those rooms creates the exact economic environment in which local businesses are forced to operate, hire employees, and set their prices. The structure is heavily criticized for its friction. Reaching absolute consensus among 20 diverse nations, especially when several are active geopolitical rivals with opposing strategic interests, is notoriously difficult, and progress is slow. Furthermore, because the declarations carry no legal weight, participating countries can, and often do, quietly ignore their own commitments to debt relief programs or climate financing once they return home. Today, the increasing reality of geopolitical fragmentation, open trade conflicts, and domestic protectionism threatens the unity and effectiveness of the forum altogether. Despite these persistent flaws, the G20's existence remains a necessity. It provides one of the very few neutral platforms left where active strategic rivals are required to sit at the same table and communicate directly. While a major crisis in one market can instantly disrupt lives on the opposite side of the planet, the G20 persists as the shared mechanism for managing the world's interconnected economic engine.